So hi, everybody here. Steve Cady at Bowling Green State University in the Schmidt-Horst College of Business. And we are a big fan of Joanne Preston. She's the editor at Organization Development Journal, which is near and dear to my heart and an important periodical in our field. We have our doctoral students here. Welcome, everybody. I think we may have some master students. We have our Associate Director, Tom Daniels, who is our pillar of strength. We have a variety of people here from different places. And one of the things I wanted to say about the RODC program, David Perry will appreciate this from his marketing background. We are, as of January, we were in September #2 and January #1, most inquired program on slate, as Tom will say, of all graduate programs at BGSU. And yeah, and Tom I might have you say just a little hello if you want. But our program is focused on building thought leadership in service of professional joy. What does that mean? When a person can do what they want, where they want, with whom they want, making the living they want, leveraging their area of thought leadership, leveraging their area of passion in service of transforming organizations, revitalizing communities, developing human potential. When they can do that and build their thought leadership, which is grounded in the notion of scalable text-based knowledge, right? It's sharing written knowledge in a way that can be scaled and serve others so that we make a difference while we sleep. I call that passive difference making. And we in our program focus on doing that within the field of organization development and change and in a doctorate. And we think of a doctorate really as an addition to a master's degree. A master's degree is like a person is equivalent to a person who can take a recipe and make a really beautiful meal and make a great dish. Doctoral students create, and our doctoral students are working to create new recipes that get copied and distributed and shared with people. And that's at the heart of thought leadership, which brings us here to Joanne and her reason for being here today, which is her inspiration to all of us to bring out our thought leadership into the world. And so, Joanne, I'm really grateful for you to be here today with us and to share your knowledge and help us all on our thought leadership journey. Before I jump in, Tom, did you want to say anything? Okay, Tom is not able to. So Tom, thank you for all your work with our program and creating the conditions for us to have a really super well-run program that serves our students and helps them to be successful. So Joanne, I'll turn it over to you and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Listen, I know that some of the people will be watching this later, the recording, and if a question is not answered that you would like to have answered, I've got my email address on the last slide, and you can email me with a question. So that's pretty important to me. And the reason why is because, you know, not that many PhDs actually publish. The ones that do are generally people who want to get tenure. But after that, they might want to get promoted, so they keep publishing. And, you know, they publish enough in order to get promoted. Those people who are not academics don't publish. And I believe strongly that every day we learn something in our profession that ought to be shared with other professionals in the field. And the best way to do that is to publish. So for me, it's really important, okay? Okay, now I don't know why we tested this out, but I can't share my slides. So could somebody try?
So you gotta, Matt, you've got to make sure that she.
Oh no, I got it. I hit the wrong button. What a dummy. Okay. Share. Where's my slides?
It's all good.
Well, I'm going to have, I'm going to have to get my slides. Then I'll get it. Slide.
Yep. Looks good.
Okay, I changed some of the slides, but not dramatically. And those of you who have the slides, they will not be very different. I decided to talk about taking an idea to publication because most people who do their dissertations actually do publish their dissertation. That's because their major professor is on their butt until they do, okay? It's after that I'm really talking about, okay? So why would you do an article over a book? Well, first of all, it helps you focus your ideas and get them out in specific chunks. A lot of people think that what they ought to do with their dissertation is write a book. And that may or may not be good. You have to decide what area you want to make an impact on. And keep in mind that unless you hit the New York Times bestseller list, you, your parents, your spouse, and maybe a few other people will read that book. Okay? Most books generally have between about 200 people that read it, unless they're on the bestseller list. So articles are read by so many more people. And they are also reviewed generally by your peers before publication, which means that your ideas are high quality. So also in publishing an article, it helps to build your reputation faster because more people read it, more people cite it, more people are interested in it and write to you about it. You may even create a dissertation in another school as a result of the work that you're doing. So that articles are faster to get out and generally the kinds of things that you want to do. But what you want to do is choose carefully where you want to build your reputation. If you're an academic, then you want to build your reputation in the academic world and choose academic journals. If you are a practitioner and in business and are a manager or a CEO or whatever you are, then you want to build it in your industry. And so you would choose newsletters and journals in your industry. If you are a scholar practitioner, which is what I am, then you have a lot of choices as to where you want to publish. And what I try to do is publish the ideas in several formats, and I'll get into that. But ideas are everywhere. After you publish your dissertation, you're going to have more ideas about what to do next than you know what to do with. But in addition to that, as you are engaging in your work activity, you're engaging in teaching, you're engaging in interacting with people, or maybe even volunteer, like you work with your church group, or you work with a particular nonprofit organization, ideas will come up to you and you need to do something with them. So some of you might want to use to-do or notes, or some of you might have an actual notebook that you write down ideas, but don't let them get away because those ideas can turn into a publication. So you want to write them down always because an idea is an idea. Okay, so you have ideas that can be theoretical, and mostly theoretical ideas are academic, and you want to add to the knowledge of the particular field of organization development and change, or maybe your particular industry. There are ideas that turn into experiments, and you can actually do participant observation. You can do actual experiments like you did with your dissertation. And that can provide a reasonable publication for you. There's also case studies and action research. Keep in mind, you're trying stuff every day in your job with your students, with your employees. All of those things are case studies and action research. And people are interested in what you do to make your teaching better, what you do to make your job better. And as long as you can keep it anonymous, especially with job-related things, then you will be able to publish certain parts of it. So there's case studies and action research all the time. There are practice things where you develop new tools or new ways of engaging people in activities, or you think of a new approach to solving a problem. And then there's opinion pieces. You're saying to yourself, OD&C is going this way, and I think it ought to be going that way. All of these are grist for lots of publications. Now, one thing you need to do is narrow down your ideas, because your ideas generally are too big to put in a 25 to 30 content page article. Okay, so most of your journals limit you. Those that are print have a tendency to limit you more than those that are purely online. Okay, now I've given you on this slide a way to get your idea to go down and get more focused and more precise. One way, and I always do this, is give a informal presentation with my peers. And lots of times you have your cohort, and you could just get a few members of your cohort together and then present a 15 to 20 minute presentation of your idea and why it's important to that group, and record it. And you have a first draft on a publication. You can do a poster session in a conference, and that will help do the same thing, because people will come up to you and they will ask you questions, and it will help you narrow down what you're thinking. There are doctoral consortiums which will help you with your dissertation. But believe me, presentation at a conference is wonderful, because they stop you at 15 to 20 minutes. And you get feedback from your peers in other universities or other practitioners. And that helps you, again, to say to yourself, this is the important part of the idea, because this is what they were interested in. So actually giving a presentation is one way of doing it. Now, you've got all kinds of choices for journals, and what you want to do is say to yourself, where do I want to build my reputation? Do I want to build it in the academic world? Do I want to build it in the consulting world? Do I want to build it in a particular industry? Okay, so you have university journals, you have industry journals, you've got open journals that will publish wide variety of things. You have peer review journals, and some of them are print and online. Some of them are online only. I want you to be careful of online journals. Now, there are online journals that are highly reputable, and you can look them up in Cabell's, which is a reference book of like 3 thick books. You can have access to it, and you can look up the journal, and you can actually see what their acceptance rate is. You can see who the editor is. You can get the editor's email. You can write to that person. You can see the editorial board. And if it's an online only journal, I want you to actually check out the editorial board. I had one student who went to an online journal, and not one person was real on the editorial board. That's a journal you don't want to publish in, okay? There are also paid journals. If you are an academic, you don't want to go near paid journals, okay? You want to go to peer-reviewed journals, okay? Now, which journal? Now, you can start with your references. And the reason why you start with your references is because those journals have already published topics in that area. So then you go to Cabell's and you look up the acceptance rate, and you look up the editor, and you kind of decide, almost like you did in college or picking a college. You pick one that is a little bit above your reach. You pick one you think you can get into, and you pick one that you know you can get into, okay? You try for the one that's a little bit above your reach. And if that doesn't work, then you go to your next journal. So what you want to decide as to which are your 3 journals is, what audience do you want to reach? How many people read this journal? What reputation does this journal have? What acceptance rate does it have? Which means what chance do you have to get in? Don't worry about the acceptance rate, because you could get in a journal because of your idea and the way you write it, and somebody else may not. So don't ever let acceptance rates stop you. The other thing in the beginning, I think Val mentioned that he wanted to get a better handle on writing. I was a terrible writer. My dissertation chair said to me, Joanne, don't ever write anything again. Your dissertation is terrible. Well, I decided that I would learn how to write. And you learn how to write by writing. And the more you write and the more you rewrite, you will learn how to write. And when you submit to a journal, they will give you the reviews back, and that will help you learn how to write. And so ultimately in my career, I've published way more than my dissertation chair. So, don't let anybody stop you from trying to publish just because you're not the best writer, or that writing is hard for you. You just work at it. Okay, there's indexes you can check to see how often, especially citations, and you want to read that #1 journal that you're going to apply to understand the style and the way accepted articles are written for them. You will rewrite a lot. Rewriting is the key to getting published. It is persistence. The person who is persistent will get their article published. Do not take a school paper and send it to an editor, ever. You want to make sure that paper fits with the journal. You want to make it that what your professors are looking for is different from editors. And so that school paper needs to be rewritten for that particular journal. Okay. And so even though it's an A+ paper and the professor says, this is a great idea, you need to publish it, that means the idea is great. Okay. And you need to rewrite it for a particular journal. Before you ever send an article to a journal, you want to make sure that you don't have too much jargon in it. We're taught in doctoral programs all the jargon in the world, but when you are publishing, not everybody knows every area of OD&C or every jargon word in your particular profession. So it is helpful when you use a jargon word that you actually give a brief definition of what it is. Okay, so you really want to write in English and not all in jargon. I have seen plenty of papers come to me that I couldn't understand the first couple of paragraphs, and I sent it back and I just said, write it in English. Get a trusted person to read it. And I'm going to emphasize trusted, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Anybody who is intelligent, who you respect, can read your article, especially somebody outside your field that doesn't know anything about the literature. If they can understand it, and you've explained everything well enough to them, then you got a great paper. Okay. Now, what I mean by trusted, especially if you choose a colleague who is in the field, you want to make sure that that colleague would never do anything like this. I had a really bright student who gave his dissertation copy for publication to one of his cohort members. That person took the article, slapped their name on second, and sent it to an online journal. The first author found out, came to me, because I was dean of this particular university at that time, and said, what am I going to do? This article is going to be published, and I wanted to publish it in my industry. And now I'm limited as to what I can do. And so I looked up the editor, I called the editor, and I said, you got to pull this article for this person, because the first author never knew that it was published. Okay, so it has to be a trusted person that you know who will respect your ideas, not grab your idea and take it for themselves. And very few people in the field do that, but this was somebody in the field who did. Okay. Also, you do want to make sure, and I didn't put it down here, but make sure that you didn't actually copy a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs from somebody else's article. I think in this electronic world, we take paragraphs from articles and slap them into our notes. Make sure that you put the reference above it so that you know that it is word for word from another journal. And if you take your own words that are published in another journal, you have to cite yourself, because the journal that published those words or that figure or that table owns it in copyright. And so you have to reference yourself and that particular journal. The one thing that I've noticed, and thank God APA 7 is now extended the number of words in the abstract, is have a great abstract. That sells your article. You chose articles to read based on abstracts. I have seen so many wonderful articles with terrible abstracts that they didn't even take a second to think about. You want to end your abstract with the 2 or 3 main reasons why somebody ought to read your article as an ad, and think of your abstract as an ad. Get the guidelines of your top choice journal. Use it as a checklist and make sure everyone is checked off. You have no idea how many articles that I get that they never even looked at my author's guidelines, and I end up sending it to them. But believe me, before you submit, you gotta think and check and then submit. And in the checking comes rewriting. When you send your article to an author, you want to send an explanation in email about why this article is important, why it fits this particular journal, that you think that you have met all of the guidelines requirements, but if you haven't, please let me know, as a writer. You respect the editor's time, and you make sure that from your end, everything is very thought out and clear. You are building your reputation with an editor. And if you send something sloppy, believe me, this is a small field. And people will actually keep running into you again and again and again. And what I'm going to say is that recently, the particular person who grabbed somebody else's article sent to me an article in which he had published word for word in another journal. Okay. It's a small world. And he didn't check to see that, that he had rewritten it or anything. He just took the whole thing and sent it to me. This builds your reputation in the field as a quality scholar or quality practitioner, that you care and editors talk. Okay. Are there any questions on anything that I've said so far? All of that is preparation. And now I'm going to go into the review process. Questions?
I have one. Can this be distributed, the recording? Can this be distributed widely? Because I know a couple people who could really use this.
I do this particular, not this particular one, but I do a how to publish webinar for ISODC. And so what would be better is for you not to distribute this. This is for your doctoral program, but for them to write to me, and I will let them know when the next time I do this. So thank you for asking. I do it on a regular basis, so they won't be missing out too long. Okay? Yes.
Joanne, you may answer this in this next section, but when I was preparing my article for the RODC recent class, I was debating how much research to cite. There's a plethora of research out there. Your answer may be cite as much as you can to support your topic and your article, or does that just get burdensome at some point when your appendix is 3 pages of APA? What's your take on that?
Okay. Your introduction, which is the justification for your article, whatever it is, experiment, case study, should be very focused. It's not a historical one. It is only justifying why this should be done, okay? Which means if you have 25 pages content, double-spaced APA, all right? Your introduction has to be very short. So maybe 3 pages, double-spaced, because your biggest part is your discussion of why all this information is important and why it applies to other things and how it moves the field forward. The history or the justification should be short. Does that answer your question, David?
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. The review process helps to define the reputation of the journal for the field. And there's lots of different review processes. It is a quality assurance for the journal, and it is an evaluation process for the field. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so the author, this is how it works in the ODJ. And other journals have other ways of doing things. And what you ought to do, and it's okay to write an editor and say, I would like to know more about your peer review process. That's fine. They'll be willing to have a Zoom with you or a telephone conversation. They want people to submit to their journal, okay? So you write a piece and you send it to the journal author or editor. Okay, so the first thing I do is see if it fits with the journal. So the topic has to make sense for the organization development and journal, okay? The second thing I do is check to see if it conforms with my guidelines. And if it doesn't fit the journal, it's rejected. Oftentimes I'll give some suggestions of other journals that might be appropriate. If it doesn't conform, I'm going to reject it. And I'm going to probably send the guidelines. I'll probably send some specific, just a few suggestions, like your title is too long for APA. Your references are not APA 7. Your abstract really needs to sell your article. So I'll give you some sort of corrections. And if you get rejected for conforming to the journal, then you can revise it and send it back. And generally I'll say something like, I really like the content. I can't do anything with the form that it is in right now. And if you get a sentence like that from a journal, then you know that it fits the content. You just have to fit the journal, okay? I will, if everything lines up, and APA 7 is relatively new and people are making lots and lots of mistakes about that. So, you know, check your APA 7. That's pretty standard in most management journals. So make sure that that works. If everything lines up, then I send it to the peer review editor. The peer review editor takes one more look at it. And in this case, it's Eric Sanders, and he may reject it because as far as he's concerned, it's not clear enough for some reason for the peer review editors. But he will also give additional information so that you can rewrite it and send it back to him. So you can see where persistence comes along, because what you're doing is trying to make it fit that journal. Now, the ODJ is a lot kinder journal, especially for new PhDs, than many of your A journals. I would consider us a B journal. And we are a scholar practitioner journal. Okay, so once he likes it, then he sends it out, and we are a double-blind peer review, which means that the author is blind to who's reviewing it, and the reviewers are blind to who this article is from. Now, if you're really famous, if Ed Shine sends us an article, it's really hard for the reviewers not to know that it's Ed Shine, because in the reference pages, there's all this Ed Shine, Ed Shine, Ed Shine, okay? But for the average person, generally it is more anonymous, okay? And for us, you send in a blind review copy and an edit copy, a full copy. Okay, the blind review takes your name out of anything except for the references, and no referrals to any authors, so that it is as blind as it can be. The reviewers review the article and fill out a form that gives specific feedback, and they can accept, they can say accept, or they can say it's a rewrite. And generally what happens is all three blind reviewers send their reviews to Eric Sander, and Eric puts all of that together. And if it is, and generally, I will say this, generally, it is a rare occasion that somebody gets accepted without a rewrite. I mean, if you get something like accept and minor changes, that is like a miracle, okay? Generally, there's some kind of rewrite. And then finally, there is acceptance. If you get a sentence, revise and resubmit, that is almost as good as an acceptance. That is encouragement. If they say reject, and here are the things that are wrong with it, and these are the things that are unclear, and these are the things you have to change, then if you actually do that, that will actually help you get through the review. Okay, I talked about the review system. Okay, so what are the reviewers looking for? They're looking for clear, coherent writing that they can understand and that jargon is clear for them. They want logic. This leads to this, leads to this. They want correct grammar and punctuation, and if you have to, send it through Grammarly or one of the other ones. People who are writing English as a second language, it's always an issue. We're kinder to those people, but you really have to make sure that your grammar and punctuation is really correct. It's always helpful to get, again, a friend who is good at that, to read for APA format, grammar, punctuation. I always send my articles to a good friend in the field and say, read it through and bleed all over it before I would ever send it out. There should be a balance between theory and practice for our journal. If you are sending to a purely academic journal, it's going to be all about theory and less about practice. You want to make sure that you're only dealing with relevant research in the introduction and solid methodology and explanation. I have gotten papers with one paragraph for methodology. That's not enough. You gotta, if you're using subjects, you gotta tell me who the subjects are. If you're using materials, you gotta tell me what that is and what standardization process of those materials. You gotta tell me a procedure. I mean, it's gotta be a clear methodology if it is a methodological paper. Integration, you want conceptual rigor. You absolutely, for any journal, want a reason why it's important to publish. What is the significance of this idea? The results. Why is it important? How does it help the field? And then for our journal, we want to see an application. The application could be to other academics. The application could be to practitioners. It could be to scholar practitioners. But for our journal, we want application, how to use it. Okay, so you get acceptance, which is rare, conditional acceptance, which is a few minor changes, rewrite and resubmit. And then you have further peer review and then total rejection. And if the peer reviewers reject it, again, they may tell you what other journals to think about, and you will always get the feedback of the reviewers. And the cool thing about that, no matter how angry you are that people told you that your baby was ugly, is that you can take those suggestions and the ones that you really like, you revise, and the ones that you don't like, then you don't, and then you send it to a new journal. If you're actually revise and resubmit, then carefully study what the peer review editor and the reviewer said. Now, I will say to all of you that when I always get my articles back, it's rare that they go through the first time, I get angry and I have to put it aside and calm down. And in a week, I can go back and read what these reviewers said. And I will say this, that every time I've rewritten based on what reviewers have said, my article is stronger and better. So make a master list of the items that you are going to revamp. Work through the master list and decide which ones you're going to do and how much you're going to do on it. when you're all ready and you've had a check, and please make sure that the content references are in your reference list. A lot of time when we rewrite something, we pull out a paragraph and all of a sudden the reference list is wrong because you've taken out references. Always make sure that your content references and your reference list line up. But when you're ready, then you write to the editor, and in this case, it would be the peer review editor, and you say, I've addressed this particular item. I've addressed this particular item in this way. I chose not to address this item, and this is why. What will happen is when it goes back to the reviewers, and it'll go back to the same reviewers, the peer review editor will add that email. Or if you do it as an attachment, they will add that attachment. And the reviewers will see your logic about how you rewrote. And you're being very clear about why you chose not to revise a particular idea. Okay. This explanation letter is absolutely important. If you receive a rejection, don't take it personally. Just take a breath and decide what you want to do with that information. Generally, it is helpful information. You want to assess your options and think of the next journal that you want to send it to. Again, it is not about quality in that sense. It's about being persistent about your high quality ideas, because there's a journal out there that's good that will accept it. And in the past, you just haven't actually hit the right journal or written it exactly the way that journal wants it. Why should you publish? Well, you owe it to the field to contribute your ideas and your discoveries. It helps you become an expert in the field. Your results may actually have an impact on existing policies in OD&C or in your industry, or the way things are done in business. It just may have some important changes for your particular field. It will advance your career in academics. If you're a practitioner and you're choosing your journals wisely, you will get more business. I have never advertised in terms of my consulting. People come to me, and that is internationally. So once I publish something, another country or another individual within a country reads it and says, would you come and help me? It is the best way of advertising. And it is self-satisfying to see your name in print. Questions? And there's my email in case you want a personal conversation. Let's go to questions, and I'm getting this off.
If I could throw in reactions and questions, that'd be great. So maybe some.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
maybe
actually add anything that I didn't say, please. And that goes for any of the students who published. Okay.
Joanne, there's a question in the chat.
Okay.
How are blind reviewers chosen for each article? Is there any effort to match based on subject matter? And I think that's a very significant question.
And the answer is yes. We, the peer review editor, that's Eric Sanders, is in charge of that. and he has a list of all of his reviewers and their expertise. I will say this, if you are wanting to get involved in peer review, Eric Sanders has a email. It's isodc.review@gmail. I'll put that in the chat. We take PhD student reviewers, we train them how, and it is a great way to actually learn how to publish when you see some of your favorites come in and you're saying, I don't like this. It's a really interesting process. So how about asking another question, unless I didn't answer it fully?
I have a question. Well, not really a question, but a comment. I think this should be given to all tenured track faculty because I work with a small peer review journal, and I don't think all writers or authors understand the process or understand what it, the peer review process and how it goes and what the journal is doing and what to do when they submit. They're supposed to submit their article. I think it would help greatly, and that they need to write to get to be better writers. I don't think they understand that, because a lot of times what I see is not their finished version, but their should be highly edited version. So I think this program or this what you've presented here should be given to all tenured track faculty who needs to publish.
I have done that for certain schools. I've done it on webinars that I give myself. So just let me know. But you're absolutely correct, because there's something about publishing that's scary and has a lot of mystique. And like, oh my God, I couldn't publish. They are so hard. Well, yes, some journals are very hard. For example, right now, the ODJ has a 10% acceptance rate. That's 10% out of 100. A journals have anywhere between 2% and 5%. Yes, it is hard. But if you are persistent and keep doing what they ask you to do, you're gonna get published. So it's all about just working at it. Okay. And
Joanne, is it fair to say then it's the reason it's 10% is because many people stop short of the finish line?
Okay.
yes, they get that first rejection and they go, oh crap, I can't do this. And especially if I reject it, I'm saying it's you need to rewrite, or that you don't have APA 7, or you don't have any, and then all of a sudden they think, oh well, rewriting's too hard. So they stop themselves. And generally in the peer review process, we get people who get detailed things that they can do to change their article, that it will be accepted, and they let it sit, and then 6 months goes by and they don't return. And actually Eric has gotten in the habit of writing to people who've been, haven't returned their article in 6 months, and say, are you interested in getting this published? If you rewrite it the way we suggest, we'll be happy to look at it again as an encouragement. But most journal articles or journals don't do that. We just, we're a kinder journal, actually. So yeah, people stop themselves. Other questions? If you think about a question later, again, I will put my there. My email is in that. That's my personal email rather than the ODJ email. So if you think about questions later, that's fine.
There's one more in the chat from Megan.
What is
What is the suggested process for rewriting or modifying a published article to submit to a different journal? Clearly, it should not be exactly the same article, but is there an acceptable modification amount to do this? And I think that's a generic question.
That's a great question. Thank you, Megan, for asking it. I'd say somewhere between 50 and 60% should be new. So, you know, you have to do another follow-up study if it's research. If it's a case study, you do another case that actually applies it and you add that. So it's okay to build an idea. Now, for example, okay, what I do is I write an article that is academic, purely academic, and it is written all about theory and how this impacts the theory. And then I write a new article on how you do it and send it to a practitioner journal. That's a very different focus. You're not doing theory at all. You're saying it's step 1, step 2, step 3. So think in terms of different audiences, always, always. And don't do anything in your life without thinking about how you might publish it, because it's really great information. And believe me, when I teach a class, I think about what it is that I can do that might affect. For example, the last doctoral class that I taught, I did a simulation on video and on Zoom. Nobody's ever done simulation on Zoom. So I did it and I recreated all the instructions and actually did it. And I wrote an article on it, how to do simulations on Zoom. Okay, so don't do anything without thinking about people who might be interested in that idea. Any other questions? Steve?
I think this is great. You know, I think that lots learned, and students are really getting a lot out of it. So thank you so much. I'm super appreciative of you being here. And as you know, we continue to engage you and other editors to come and chat, and it's been a lot of fun. So there's a lot of commitment and generosity in our field. And so a lot of times we just have to ask to get the help that we need.
And that's true. And I'm going to second that because don't be afraid to write to people who are editors or famous people and, you know, and ask them questions, because they'll be happy to answer it.
I was going to say too, Dr. Preston, a wonderful presentation. Love your enthusiasm and your encouragement, because I know Dr. Katie has talked a lot about, among some of the other professors, Dr. Gorlick as well, about information. If you don't publish it, it's lost. It's lost learning and it's gone for good. And, you know, that's something as a doctoral student that we're all hoping to achieve over time. So thank you for that encouragement and an awesome presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate it. And keep in mind, there's only 10% of PhDs that actually publish. It's a lousy percentage rate. So, you know, publish in the area that's going to build your reputation. Let people know in your field the new ideas that you have. Matt,
Thank you.
is there anything? Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
This is great. No, thank you. I think it's awesome. And there'll be more. We look forward to keeping you connected into our work here at BGSU and from all of our students and faculty and staff. Thank you, Joanne, and more to come. So bye, everybody. Thanks for
Okay.
a great day today.
Bye.